Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the session today. So welcome to Exploring New Opportunities and Learning Through Art Integration. This webinar is part of the Art First Learning Together series, where we bring people in together to share knowledge and insights on art education. Redefining art education since 2009, Art First radically reimagines pedagogy, creativity, visual literacy, and cultural awareness at multiple levels through our arts education and art integration programs. We do this work in schools, workshops, and seminars, as well as publishing critically acclaimed children's books and documentary films on Indian art and artists. To learn more about us, do visit us on our website at artfirst.co.in. So a quick word before we begin on the event flow. Post my introductory remarks, each panel member will have 5 minutes to present and set the context of their work, following which we will engage in an interactive discussion, and we will have time for questions and answers from the audience. You are welcome to keep your screens on. We will take questions through the chat box on Zoom only, so please make sure to type in your questions, and we would request all attendees to put themselves on mute. I am your moderator today. I'm Rivka Sadarangani. I'm the COO of Art First, and I'm very excited to have everybody here today. In case of any technical difficulties, our backend team is here today and will intervene as required. We ask that you remain online. So we're going to jump right in. The session today takes us from National Education Policy 2020, which is India's first educational policy of the 21st century and lays particular emphasis on the development of the creative potential of each individual. The CBSE board published guidelines making a case for art-integrated learning in 2019. Now more than ever, we have an urgent imperative to reimagine current educational frameworks to develop the creative and critical capabilities of children in all learning environments. Arts integration is an approach to teaching in which students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. This approach holds the potential to transform learning environments, and each of our panel members bring their particular perspective and approach. Today we have Dr. Penny Hay, is an artist, an educator, a research fellow at the Center for Cultural and Creative Industries, a reader in creative teaching and learning, and a senior lecturer in arts education at the School of Education, Bath, and is also the director of research for the House of Imagination. School Without Walls, and the House of Imagination and Forest of Imagination. Penny's doctoral research focused on how we can support children's learning and identity as artists. Our next presenter is Siddharth Tas, who is a designer, curator, a visual artist, and a teacher. He is an Asia Society, Charles Wallace and Nehru Trust Fellow, and was awarded the British Council's International Young Design Entrepreneur in 2009 and various international fellowships to countries across the world. In 2002, he founded the multidisciplinary Siddharth Tas studio that has worked on over 100 projects across 8 countries on responsible design and cultural spaces. The studio works with cultural institutions, museum complexes, thematic exhibitions, art projects, and installations, as well as livelihood programs rooted in crafts communities. Uttara Singh, who is the director of the Shriram Millennium schools, is an educationist and an administrator with a vision of taking learning beyond academics in order to create new generations of lifelong learners. Uttara is well recognized for her impactful and sustained contribution to the field of school education. Under her leadership, the Shriram Millennium schools have received numerous awards for innovative teaching and have been consistently ranked in the top 50 schools in India. So a very warm welcome to all our panelists. And now over to you, Dr. Penny Hay.
Thank you very much, Rivka, and hello everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So let's hope this works. Is that okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So my work, thank you for the introduction. My work involves working alongside educators and artists to develop and embed a creative and reflective pedagogy in schools and early years settings, so across all phases. And I truly believe that art is not a luxury. Art education is certainly not a luxury and just for the few. Art is a human right. I love Bob and Roberta Smith's work. This is one of his paintings. And I believe that art is one of the highest forms of creativity. In the United Nations Rights of the Child, Article 31 says that every child has the right to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. So together, we need to make the case for the role of the arts in all of our lives. And that's why arts education is so important. So art integrated learning emphasises the development. Oh, I've got a bit of static on my screen, sorry. Arts integrated learning emphasises the development of the creative potential of each individual and makes these creative processes visible. So I just had a little play with, I'm sure there's 100 and 100 more that you could generate. So developing an arts integrated learning programme in your school will also increase your children and students' knowledge and experience in multiple subjects across disciplines, engaging their creative and their critical thinking to achieve greater understanding across all walks of life. Importantly, our metaphor for the house of imagination can happen anywhere. So the House of Imagination is a studio for children and young people to work alongside creative professionals. So learning everywhere and in everything. I was fortunate to work at Goldsmiths University and work alongside Tate Modern's learning team for many years before it opened and as it opened. So here on the left, a beautiful Yoyo Kasama image, and wondering, is this child exploring maths? Is she exploring art? In fact, it was about infinite possibilities, giving children the freedom to find and follow their fascinations and developing a more flexible concept of education through curiosity and creativity, together with the capacity of the arts to invite possibility thinking, as Anna Kraft said. She was my PhD supervisor, sadly Anna died, but thinking about how we co-design a creative and critical pedagogy together on behalf of children and young people, no matter what their age. For my PhD, I focused in on primary age children from 4 to 11, but my findings are transferable across all phases. And in fact, the way that I co-designed my PhD is very much the way I teach in the university as well. So I wanted to explore the notion of children's identity as artists and to distill a repertoire of pedagogical characteristics. And I think as adults, we can inspire children and young people's imagination and support their key learning dispositions: creative learning, visual inquiry, questioning, investigating, observing, describing, exploring multiple viewpoints, reasoning with evidence, finding complexity and subtlety, comparing and connecting. The list goes on. Let's collect some together. And this is Bo's body of work, and she really explored the notion of landscape and pattern through the 5 years that I worked with her. She invited me into an exhibition that she'd co-curated. And Jay, he also was fascinated with mountains and monsters and working quite large scale, all with a sense of adventure that linked back to his fascinations with adventure stories and cartoons. So Rivka mentioned our project School Without Walls, which is in its 10th year now. And again, it can happen anywhere, not just in the UK. I'm looking forward to returning to India to work with the team post-COVID. So School Without Walls is an inquiry-based approach embedding the arts in schools, working alongside educators, artists, mentors and cultural centres to co-design a creative curriculum across phases. Importantly, engaging children and young people in authentic learning in and through the arts, valuing their agency and their interests, So adults work alongside children and young people as companions in learning to facilitate meaningful creative inquiries in real life contexts, connecting learning with the real world. For me, that's very important, and a lot of our work is embedding the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So the other important aspect is that every child and young person, and adult actually, keeps a sketchbook or a reflective journal, and here recording their ideas and their processes to develop visual inquiry and collaborative co-inquiry. So children are engaged in the cultural life of the place where they live as active citizens and stewards of the environment, helping children to become confident and progressive learners and thinkers, children who feel a deep sense of connection and purpose, and so important now. And I wanted to share the kind of the importance of arts in all of our lives, and the wonderful Shilpa Gupta. I know that you may know these images, but I think no matter what the background or circumstance of the child or the adult, artists have shown us this way that art can be a pedagogical tool to facilitate creativity and personal and social transformation. Sheila Berman on the left, I was lucky to work with her in London, and I was teaching at the Institute of Education, and Yinka Shonabari, a colleague at Goldsmiths. And on the right, I didn't meet Frida Kahlo, but I love her work. So I think, static again, sorry. I think for me, continuous professional development like these sessions are so important. So key learning in and through the arts, and really thinking about the role of the adult alongside children and young people, and the importance of developing a creative pedagogy. Key characteristics of a creative pedagogy are around co-inquiry, co-construction, attention to creative dispositions, learner agency, and the quality and rigor of learning. So co-designing open-ended activities and multimodal learning. So here on the right, teachers in a professional development session that I'm running in a local gallery, and on the left, children and young people in the art school where I teach, thinking about the students' work. And what does a creative school look like? So here's a local primary school. I used to run, this was my PhD research, where I was running a session with the children about being an artist, but the creativity, making it visible in the school, it's palpable, you can see it. And I think also in terms of, oh yes, and I should also say that's Richard Long, the international artist on the right, visiting the school. So the children have role models that they can work alongside. And what does a creative city or village look like? And for me, our project Forest of Imagination, please all get involved this week. We're running up to 10-10-20 with TED Countdown around climate change and the climate emergency. But for me, Forest of Imagination shines a light on the importance of art, nature and creativity in all of our lives, and invites everyone to have a conversation, no matter where they are in the world, about the importance of these themes in a playful and immersive environment. So just to end then, just to mention our work with the team on the call today, whatever time it is for you, in Dharavi, in Mumbai, and the project, which is called Rethinking Waste, it's an Arts Humanities Research Council project, where Compound 13 Lab is an experimental learning space built on methodological and pedagogical innovation, where issues of waste, work, education and sustainability are explored to develop an ecological design curriculum for young people, with a focus on the city as classroom and living curriculum underpinned by the SDGs. The intention is to develop an innovative entrepreneurial set of solutions led by Dharavi's young people in response to the challenges that they face, and build creative skills both in their lives now and for future employment. So more vital now than ever, giving children and young people agency in their learning is so vital. And it shows that art is a medium through which we can understand ourselves and transform the world around us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Penny Hay. We'll come back after the presentations for questions. So up next, we have Siddharth Tas.
Hello, I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. Okay. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Great. I started my studio about 18 years ago, and I think I pretty much see everything I do as part of my studio. So I think one of those adages of how do you separate work and life is something I've kind of, it's been missed on me. But when I started my studio, it was pretty difficult, I think, because the idea was to see what design meant. And I started a design studio. Oops, one second. Naturally, as technology will have it, my presentation is frozen. Sorry, can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just a second. Sorry, I'm going to just stop sharing. Sorry, my presentation suddenly just froze.
One second, maybe we can share the presentation from our side.
Let me try one more time.
Yeah,
just to kind of,
try one more.
yeah. Okay, can you see it again?
Yes, see slide 2. Yes.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. So when I started my studio, one of the things that I was really excited about was the fact that I wanted to somehow combine the education I'd had by having studied history and then having worked with craftspeople and then studying design. And I wanted to bring that into my practice. I wanted to bring in the strands of architecture, art, craft, design, everything together. And the kind of choices I made and kind of things I chose to work on were heritage in museums, culture in public spaces, art and craft and livelihood projects, visual and performance art, interacting digital media. So, and actually I didn't think about this when I started out. I started by thinking very small and just taking on a project at a time. And I just felt that, we have no dearth of issues in our country. And when you get embroiled in a project, you really are, you are face to face with the reality of all that is wrong and all that is exciting and right. And I wanted somehow to make these things part of the kind of work that I had. So this was the first project. It was with a gentleman called Uttara Singh, who I had incredible respect for. So in my design college, we had lovely books on textiles that we would refer to, written by him. So this was my first project, which was on Khadi. And it's kind of interesting because it was the 2nd of October. And actually, what did it mean to have Khadi as a fabric of freedom? So to start off by designing this as the first project, oh gosh, it's freezing again and again. It's a shame. Sorry. I'm just going to just quickly, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Why don't you try once more to share it again?
Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to, oops. Sorry, just give me a second.
Sure.
Very sorry about that.
We could try sharing it from our side.
Yeah, I think what happened was by mistake, it opened the file 3 times somehow.
Okay.
I think that kind of messed it up.
So would you like us to try sharing it from our side?
Let me try it one last time, and if it doesn't work, then from your side, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is where we are.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. Very lovely. Okay. So this led me to apply for up to apply my mind to other projects and elsewhere in the world. And I began to start by doing that working in London. I worked at the Victor and Albert Museum. So not too far in some ways from what Peggy, you were talking about. And it was great fun to work with a huge behemoth of a museum where you have 700 people, and to conceive of things of how design really impacts on culture and vice versa and society as such. So this was an exhibition I co-designed. And oh gosh, it's happening again. I think, Rivka, can you please try it from your side?
Sure.
Yeah.
Rivka, could you share the screen? Thank you, everyone, for bearing
Sorry
with us.
about this. Yeah.
No worries at all. It's fine. We'll figure this out. Just let Likla know which slide you want to be on.
Yeah. So the black colored slides, 2 more. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Is it as a full screen? Can everyone see it as a full screen?
Yes, it is a full screen.
Oh, great. Okay, so you could just go on, and I'll keep talking about it. If you could just give it 10 seconds or so. So basically, the idea was to kind of try and work in rural, urban, and international settings. So this was a museum that I worked with in Zurich, in Switzerland. And there were a couple of exhibitions, the museum exhibitions that I curated and designed. And the idea was to see everything across genres. So be it curation or design or graphics. Yeah, you can continue. And that took me to the whole idea of doing institutional design. So this was a college I designed in Delhi. And I was very excited about education. That was my first career in my life. So when I got this opportunity to design a college, I really got excited, and I tried to convince others in the studio because they were a bit wary about it. And because it was a warehouse which had to be converted, and this is how it kind of came about. It was 60,000 square feet of space, and we weren't allowed to touch the building as such from the outside, but from inside we demolished all the walls and created new spaces. Yeah, you can carry on. Yeah, that led me to other kind of cultural institutions. This was a museum of Jodhpur in Rajasthan, and it was a curation design, but everything that comes with it, which is from lighting to product to furniture, and actually the whole storytelling, looking at interactivity, looking at films. We might be doing a virtual museum for the same museum later this year. Then this is one of the most exciting projects we are part of, which is the JD Center of Art, and I'll talk later about it, which is being, the architecture is done by B.V. Doshi, who won the Pritzker, which is like the Nobel Prize of Architecture as such. And it's this incredible, so we made this little model for everyone to understand, and it's a beautiful sculptural building. Carry on. Thank you. And that led me to, in our studio, to do many other projects, which was, and when I say I don't really mean I, this is because I'm not able to see the difference between the studio and I, for better or for worse. So this is the Jal Mahal in Jaipur, and it's this beautiful heritage site, and it's really conceiving all the art that is inside it also. Yeah, please, go on. Yeah, it's envisioning the kind of narrative as such, and this was purely an aesthetic project. Very rarely do we get a project which is pure just aesthetic. That's a luxury. Most of the projects we take are much more somber and are beset with lots of social issues and contextual issues. Yeah, please go on. So yeah, so it was just conceiving a lot of the art pieces and seeing the entire scenography of the space while working with local artisans and craftspeople and painters. Most of the heritage projects we do are situated in their context. So they basically use a lot of people who become our collaborators who are from the vicinity. This is one such project, which is to design a museum for the temples of Puri and Linguraj in Orissa. This was made into an exhibition that was shown in India International Center, and this is that. And this is the kind of idea that we had of how would we envision the entire museum. So the next one. Yeah, and you see the kind of larger exhibits that we are making. So here there's an incredible array of craftspeople, about 300 of them who are working with us. Above you see a part of the temple, the model of the temple itself. Yeah, in the next one. you see another small architectural frieze. So it was really, it was to combine architecture and art together, and based on a lot of scholarship, and we're looking at iconography, and we're creating lovely virtual exhibits as well as interactive exhibits on it. Yeah, please go on. So you see the larger pieces, they're incredible. It's 18 feet by 7 feet in sandstone, and it's really the rendition of the temple's entrance. Yeah, next. And then the whole kind of dialogue and collaboration. So I think over the last 2 decades, I've worked with about 2,500 craftspeople in 15 states. And it's been this incredible sense of trying to create something which is kind of a legacy bearing projects as such, where you have this incredible heritage that we have, and how do we bring it to the fore? And the whole kind of dialogue of who's the maker, what is the kind of, not just skill, but what is the kind of symbology, what is the kind of the heritage that is passed on. Yeah, next again. And that brings us to also contemporary spaces. So these were kind of retail spaces we did for the airport in Bangalore. We did about 10,000 square feet of retail spaces, celebrating the arts, and a couple of art installations. This is again at the airport in Bangalore. Next again, yeah. And then to contemporary kind of spaces. This is in London again, the South Bank Centre, and every year they do this large installation that is commissioned. So these are 2 of those, which are transient. And again, some other transient spaces. This was a Nehru Centre, 40,000 square feet of space, which we created into kind of these installations and performances and music. Yeah, next again. 2 larger spaces, which are private spaces. This is an 84,000 square feet space where we conceived a whole bunch of art, but working with an amazing number of craftspeople across the country over 3.5 years. Yeah, next again. 2 other pieces. So each of these, we set up a studio for each of these pieces in different parts of the country. And this is a beautiful tree of life, which is bringing together 2 different sets of traditional painters, of kalamkari painters and miniature painters. And you see this beautiful lapis lazuli stone ground into the blue of the clouds. Yeah. And the kind of workshop space that we set up in Delhi of the 5 kalamkari artists and miniature artists who together came here from Andhra and Rajasthan and worked with me. Yeah, please go on. 2 smaller and much more frugal craft workshops across the country. This was in Tripura, where we had next to no electricity. We had electricity for 2 hours a day. Outskirts of Agartala near the Bangladesh border. And yeah, go on. Which was about a livelihood project and looking at how can we bring in the idea of engineering, product design, and livelihood together. So here's this lovely stool we are making. And this stool went on to then be exhibited at the London Design Festival at Earl's Court. And you have a beautiful lamp that got featured in the Victor and Albert Museum's book on design. So the idea was that how do we create something which is has rudimentary technology, but amazing amount of dexterity, and how do you bring it to the fore again? To a lamp which is just above me actually in my studio, which is made by steel wire by birdcage makers. Yeah, go on. 2 books. I love to read, I love to design, so this kind of coalesced both those kind of loves. This is a book on the film Manto made by Siddharth Tas. Yeah, the next one. And the photography of it, and just celebrating the film's journey. And photography is something I really care deeply about, and I love it to bits. And if you go to the next one, you'll see this is a book that I designed, but also photographed for. And the next one, it has a lovely array of stories of 11 women who did amazing work in crafts and textiles. So I wanted to bring out the pictures that would really, do justice to it. So these. And then my own black and white. I used to apprentice the celebrated photographer Raghu Rai, and I used to print myself and write. And these are some articles I wrote with my photographs. So this just shows a kind of a variety of work of what basically my studio and I do. And that kind of, yeah, that's the end of that. So basically the approach is to do something which is holistic and responsible, to celebrate tradition, technology in a crossover approach that really brings together the disciplines. Yeah, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Yeah. Thank you.
Your practice truly embodies a multidisciplinary and collaborative process, which is what art integrated learning is all about. It's wonderful to see the actual that type of thinking and learning put into practice all across the world through your projects.
Thank you.
So
that's one of the photographs at the back.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So up next we have Uttara Singh, Director of the Shriram Millennium Schools. Uttara, you're on mute.
Yes, yes.
We got you. Go ahead.
So namaste to everyone. I'm absolutely amazed to see the presentations that Penny and Siddharth showed us. And I think I bring something completely different to the table. My work would be my children. And if I had to show you pictures of, maybe hundreds and thousands of children who I have kind of seen, each one is a piece of art and each one is more beautiful than the other. So, coming from a schooling background and education being a passion for me, I've been a teacher all my life. And I think as a teacher also, I always felt that, somewhere our education system was very limiting. And it was not really allowing children to have their own creativity and children to really be themselves. And as a teacher also, I always remember that whether I taught history or I taught geography, I always wanted to, take the children out of the classroom because I felt that the four walls kind of restricted us rather than giving us the freedom to teach. And I think that was something which really made me think that, when I became an administrator, that we should have schools that are really, really encouraging children to be creative. I think rather than encouraging them to be creative, to just let their own original creativity come out. And children should not feel restricted in their environment. And that is what the Shriram Millennium Schools are all about. And when we started the schools, we just displayed the artwork of every single child. And we do it even today. And whenever any visitor comes to our school, they always tell us that, there's a great warmth about your schools. There's a vibe there that we feel is very warm. And I always say it's our artwork. And the artwork of any school truly reflects, I think, the actual, education that is happening in that school, because children express themselves so beautifully through art. We have our little 2.5-year-olds who would probably, just there'll be a squiggle and a stick kind of a thing. And you ask them, what is this? That's my mama. And she's made this wonderful paratha for me. Now, that is a child's imagination, and that's perfectly all right. I mean, a banana or a snack like a paratha doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I believe that schools today have been given this beautiful opportunity by the national education policy that's come out, where art is going to be integrated. We have been doing it for a very long time, and we were very, very lucky to get Art First, with us on this journey for the last so many years. Because what we were doing was we were doing it ourselves, through our own teachers, our own educators. But with Art First, we got actually a very, I'll say, a very proper program that brought us from one point to the next and actually taught us how art can be integrated into every single subject, and which has made my children, honestly speaking, absolutely different in their thinking and approach. We want children to be creative. We want them to be responsible. We want them to be collaborative learners. We want them to be, so many things today. I think every adult wants the children in their lives to be those perfect images of everything. But how do we do that? It doesn't happen if you treat all children together sitting in a class as one lot and you're going in and delivering lectures. I don't think that's the way to teach. And one beautiful thing that can help us make our classes actually connected to life is art. As I was seeing Dr. Penny's pictures and the way the children were working, I just went back to my school. And lockdown has kept us away. But really, really, you made me miss my school, because those are the kind of things my children do. We have our art rooms, which are full of clutter. We want our children to mess around with things. We want to take classes outside. We want them to explore, and we want them to have, their own thought process reflected in what they believe. Because finally, what do schools do? Is it all about those boards and those marks and those exams and getting into the best colleges of the world? Yes, of course, that's important. We do want our children to, have a pathway when they leave school, but there's a lot more. I always feel that, we want our children to be those good human beings who go out into the world and they do make a difference in whatever way they can. And they are thinking individuals. And that is where I think art, and in fact, all creative arts, I would not only restrict it to art, that is a very important component, but definitely I feel even, performing arts, uh, visual arts, of course, even sports, even games, everything adds a dimension to a child, which is very, very important. But as we are talking about art today, let me show you a few pictures of some of the work of my children. Like I said, I can't show you every child because that would be another seminar altogether. So I'll just show you a few pictures of the artwork that we've done. And I'll request Art First to kindly play that presentation for me. So you would actually see a few pictures of what the children do, how they perceive things. And if you come to our school, every single wall is covered with the work of the children. And one thing more I'd like to say, because I know we have an audience with a lot of educators here, please don't look for perfection in art. Every piece of art is perfection. Absolutely every child's work is perfect because the child has portrayed it the way he or she believes is perfect. Nobody wants to, do anything which is imperfect. As a human being, we are always trying to reach for our highest and our best. And children are automatically, I'll say, programmed to do that. Sometimes our education system, actually negates that. We find fault in their work, and that then leads to them finding fault in themselves. So I would personally encourage everybody here to be more encouraging, to appreciate whatever the children do. And of course you want to guide them towards maybe doing better, and that is to be done, but we start always with appreciation. So what does art all? I think Penny already showed us that beautiful pyramid of things. So I have a few similar things here that art does. I would not read it because I'm sure all of you are able to see it. Can we move to the next slide? Now, these are the things that our children have done. You can see like my body tracing and doodling. And some of these things are happening even virtually because we are having our art classes, and they're the most looked forward to classes because children are doing things at home and parents are enjoying it with them. So a child lies down on a piece of paper, a child's mom or somebody probably just traces the body, and look at the way she's doodled inside her own body. It is so amazing what all that picture would talk about if this girl could explain to you what she's done. We have another child who's doing rainbow using oil pastels, paints. She's got cotton there. She's drawn some birds. There's a sun. I remember once there was a child who made 3 suns in the same picture. All right. And one of them was orange, one was yellow, and one was black. And obviously we were wondering that why would there be 3 suns in the same picture? Now, rather than, telling him that, this is wrong, there's only one sun, we asked him that, beta, what is this? So he says, ma'am, this is the morning sun, which is orange when I see it from my window. This is the afternoon sun, which is bright yellow. And this is the night sun, which is black. Now, if that is not creativity, I don't know what is. So, we have to accept that children can do things so beautifully. Here you can see a lot more things. So we do wonder time with our children. Now, wonder time is just exploration, understanding. So they would do, art through a straw, art through ribbons, art through threads, everything. And every child, just see the expression on their faces. Just see the expression where they're feeling so happy. This is our school. And here you can see, now here you're teaching plants in science. Normally a teacher just taking a plant to a class, the roots, shoots, leaves, flowers, great, do that, no problem. But how about you take the children out and let them have an art activity where they actually see plants in all their glory, in all their differences, in all the different colors and hues and, everything about it. I think for a child, the lesson on plants would be much more interesting after they've done an activity like this. So when we talk about art integrated learning, That's a live example. Now, Holi Festival, I think something that we all enjoy. So our children actually dry the flowers, they make the colors, they use those colors. So one is, you feel very, very empowered that you are able to do something. Also, you are teaching children about the environment. You're teaching them to be environment friendly. Holi in India can be absolutely ranging from the most beautiful to the most awful. So I think it's for us to make these festivals very, very special for our children. So that's something that they were doing at Holi. Diwali posters, no to crackers, children working in teams. So collaboration, creativity, giving space to each other, accepting things. All these soft skills are learned through art, through doing it together, to be able to understand how things work. Because that's what the world wants today, isn't it? Teamwork, collaboration, people who can accept others, who can encourage others. These are the skills that all I think job seek people who are in positions to give jobs are looking for people like this today. And I think art is a particularly an experience that allows children to do this very easily and with a lot of freedom of thought. So that's where I think art is very, very important. Here there's the other one where they created an original character. You have a book cover. So designing a book cover. This was an activity we did just recently, in fact, just last month. And children had to do it in Hindi and in English. So they use their imagination, whatever works. Somebody's written a small synopsis of the book. Somebody's got, in Hindi, he's got Agent Jagat. So that's his imagination. And we've appreciated it. So lots and lots of things can happen with art where you can encourage children to really, think out of the box. And that again is a much desired skill. Social studies now. So folk art from different states. I was seeing Siddharth's presentation and there I saw people were working with their hands. Now, mostly what I have observed, maybe I'm wrong, please correct me if I am, but these are skills that have come down from generation to generation to generation, where people have learned at the laps of their parents on how to make a particular artifact, how to create craft. And I think if we just teach our children the sense of this, probably some of them will turn out to be a fantastic artist or curator and so much more. So when you say Varli art, when you say Gond art, when you say these things and children get together, we have this Mad About series in our school. And these are festivals at the end where it's a parent school initiative. And we always have a curated art show done for children across school. Every student participates. And I remember we had a beautiful, huge dog, which was nearly, I'll say, the size of a room, which grade 4 children had created with Gond art. And he was the absolute highlight. He stayed in our school for years till the paper started, fraying away. The children would not let him go. And that was the attachment they had to something they had created. Of course, maths, we all know about tangrams and how we can, teach children through tangrams. And there are so many other things. Triangles, you have circles, shapes. What do teachers do? They're drawing them on the floor of the classroom. Children are jumping on them. Children are drawing them. So I think art is there in everything. And a school that kind of, doesn't give or just treats art as a subject, treats art as an extracurricular subject. I'm hoping that today you'll go back with a changed mind, because I'm one person who always believed that, art should be a very, very integral part of every school. And I'm very, very thankful that our school is one such school and we've been given this opportunity to create it. And of course, there's so many things that, you do with art. So today, design, it's such a big career option. But can you just learn design like that? I think you have to encourage children right from the beginning to think differently, to think about why is a particular thing designed in a particular way? Why is it not done differently? How can I do it differently to make it better? So if you look at even now, this whole pandemic, it has taught us to be more creative. It has taught us to use this online forum to connect. And I think, again, I always believe that earth, if you remove the art from the middle, it's just going to be an eh. And that is not going to be a beautiful earth at all. So the earth in itself has art in the middle. So let's keep art there, and let's, we'll talk more about it. I can go on because it's something very close to my heart. And like this thought says, art is as natural as sunshine and as vital as nourishment. Without the both of them, I don't think we can survive. So let's give art its place in the sun that it deserves.
Thank you, Uttara. Thank you, Uttara, for that very beautiful presentation. I really enjoyed seeing all the children's images. We are running just a little bit of a time check to everybody. We are running a little behind, so I'm going to try to give everybody a chance to answer some of the questions we had prepared in advance, as well as questions from the audience. Right now, my first question is to Dr. Penny Hay. Can you tell us a little about what education can learn from the arts as it pertains to an educational practice? In your work, you had talked about creative values, relationships, environments, behavior, dispositions, and learning. So we'd love to hear more from you on that subject.
Yes, thank you. What fascinating presentations, brilliant ideas, and a lovely synergy between our work as well. I think, as Rivka said, at the heart of our research, so House of Imagination is a research organisation. I just put in the chat that Sir Ken Robinson was our patron. He sadly died recently, but we talked very much I worked with Ken since, 1989. But he talks very much about, why we do, the values that underpin why we do what we do alongside children and young people, and the importance of creativity, and especially the arts, to demonstrate the creativity in the world. So you're living out that daily practice of being creative through the arts, but creativity is in everything. And I think we've used the frame of creative values, creative dispositions, learning behaviours, creative environments, optimising creative environments, and then thinking about creative relationships. And those four key areas of our research really do underpin everything we do. We return to them every year. And I was personally very inspired as an artist and also as an educator, as a researcher, when I visited Reggio Emilia in Italy in 2000, and it really transformed the way that, maybe confirmed rather than transformed, but the way that, if we start with children's ideas, if we have clear values about how we're working alongside children and young people, if we create those beautiful environments to learn in together. Reggio talks about the environment as the third teacher, that it's important that the adult, whether that's a teacher or a parent or a carer, alongside the child, and then eliciting the children and young people's ideas in environments of inquiry. So I think that is a brilliant kind of framing, but it's good to tease that out together as a school staff.
Rivka, unmute yourself, please.
Or I can carry on.
Rivka, unmute yourself.
Unmute, sorry. Siddharth, your practice and experience has been truly transdisciplinary and collaborative. Can you share some insights that embodied some of these concepts?
Yep, I'd love to. And this time I'm going to try again, one more time, to share my screen, and hopefully have to be terribly jinxed for it not to happen again. Okay. Yeah. Can everyone see? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. So I wanted to talk about the interdisciplinary nature of work, but also the fact that it's then kind of across the seas and across cultures as such. And one of the things that has really excited me is this whole kind of coalescence of a rural, urban, international that I was talking about. So here you see how that installation that is behind the lady who was the director of the South Bank Centre in London, which is the biggest cultural centre as such of Great Britain. And you have this big installation. And the way it was kind of fashioned, it was entirely made in my studio, apart from the printing which happened outside. And you have the lovely tailor who worked with me for 3 years, a retinue of amazing embroidery ladies who made it. Another installation, which from far looks like a textile piece, but from on closer thing, you realize that there's metal, there is pleated paper, there's fabric, and all of this, apart from the welding, was again done in the studio. And the welding was done by the same birdcage makers who made that lamp. You have me sitting in the middle over there with this whole amazing bunch of welders. And we made something completely different, which brings tradition and kind of contemporary again together. To traveling elsewhere in the world, this was in Japan, where I worked on a design of a public space for a city that was coming up in Chiba Prefecture. Or in Mexico, where I headed a team of 36, and we worked on design of a plaza for the city of Monterrey near Texas border. But what is far more exciting is how do institutional projects happen. And I think this is something that is, for me, the biggest celebration of interdisciplinary work in my practice. And here it's something that we're envisioning as spaces. And then, gosh, again, it's happened. I'm sorry.
Oh dear.
This was the longest run today. Thank God. Okay. To finally, the way the museum really turned out and how it happened and the kind of stories we could tell and how did we want people to engage. And though from far it looks like a typical museum as such, as you come closer, there are films, there are interactive content. And this is still the first stage because sadly we wanted to really push the boundary, but we had we were constrained by what the government allowed us to do and not. But what it did allow us to do is to really look at the building itself and to think of opening up all the things that were cramping this beautiful historic 83-year-old building designed by the architect who did the Umaid Bhavan Palace. And so it had this kind of little things that were part of Art Deco architecture with the kind of Rajasthani architecture. And we began to look at just the building and about how do institutions happen and why is it that art is seen in this kind of blinkered way, and why isn't it that we can look at institutions in a larger way? So here's the air conditioning, which is run by solar panels over there. We created 17 kilowatts of energy to run the museum. We looked at how did the sun move. We didn't even make a single hole in the building of the museum. And then we are creating this beautiful 1-acre formal garden, again, almost like a mix of landscape and art, and looking at trees as such itself. So there's this amazing denuded 23-acre garden. And we just thought here, it sits in the middle of one of the most arid cities of the country, which is stricken with amazing divides. There are racial divides, there are communal divides, there are religious divides, there are gender divides. And thereby, the possibility to do something with the public space is immense as something that brings people together. So we began to look at trees as an art, like nature is possibly the biggest kind of form of art. And, when do they flower? What kind of fruits do they bear? What is the color of the flower? Are they xerophytic? Are they suited to the climate? And that took me to this whole idea that can we look at the study of botanical paintings and flowers, of the country, and where do they come from? And this whole thing of cross-pollination of cultures. And I think the arts in that way bring a lot of this kind of lovely, transcending these kind of divisive forces. And here we have these, the kind of botanical flowering project as such. And that same idea of nature and art, we looked at nature and art with kalamkari painters of how do you, we call it birds of paradise, to create this beautiful kalamkari piece that then went on to the ceiling of the shop that we designed at the airport. So it was a contemporary space, but be it the stone that was made by the craftspeople of Karnataka, to the textiles from Tamil Nadu weavers, to the kalamkari paintings that you just saw from Andhra. And being spaces that are more permanent to transient spaces, be it of a theater. Here, this is a play and the set designed for the play. called Between the Lines, and the photography and the promos of the play, to making credits for a film by the same person, Nandita Das, or the Firak. So it is just to show how does interdisciplinary kind of nature work in the arts for our practice. This is the installation that I mentioned earlier in the previous thing, where it was a large installation for the airport, but the whole engineering that went behind it, we were collaborating with L&T, collaborating with CISF to look at security issues. This was a 4 meter by 3 meter by 3 meter thing that came up, and there it is at the international terminal at the Bangalore airport. And but we worked with about 30 painters and craftspeople across Tanjore in Tamil Nadu and Mysore in Karnataka. And then everything we do, we film it, because we feel there's such a lovely story to tell of the people who've made it. And even the credits are equally shared. There's our studio's credit. There is MS Anand, who's here, who set up this lovely workshop, to A.S. Sambandhamurthy's workshop of amazing, lost wax cast things, to again a kind of interdisciplinary approach of working while creating the museum. And I showed you the kind of sculptures that we rendered, but also, the craftspeople made this amazing, lovely model, which we had about 6 architects working and a retinue of craftspeople working. And, it shows you, here's a little video. We made lots of these little videos of just showing how it was done. It's a bit stuttering today. I'm having lots of technical glitches, so do bear with me. But basically it was about, how do you tell these stories? And again, spaces where there's video, there's sound, there's music, there is the product design, there is the signage. It's like everything is together. So, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And then the kind of other exhibitions, that we do. So this for me is like something that really brings together a whole bunch of those things together. This is a Pankha exhibition that we did in Delhi, and it was about creating this whole space, and we wanted people to come really up close, but also interact. We had guided tours every weekend. We had craft workshops within the space and outside the space and with the craftspeople. And then we looked at what is the publication about, and so that people get to know more about it. There were stamps that were designed, which are available in the postal department across the country. So it basically just shows this kind of interdisciplinary work that I think I feel excited about, and the idea again of transcending boundaries very seamlessly. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And this time only one glitch. So I think by my third presentation, hopefully there'll be none. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We've got a few more questions, and I would just ask all the panelists if you could keep your answers to like 1 to 2 minutes at the most, because we are.
Sorry.
No worries. It's fine. Uttara, I wanted to come back to you. You have a very strong vision, as you shared with us, to create a learning environment that supports the holistic development of the child. Could you speak specifically to how art-integrated learning can take this vision forward? And what specific steps and actions have you taken and plan to take?
Yeah, great. So, when we talk about holistic development of a child, the word holistic development today has many connotations. So holistic development, what we believe at our school is that children, when by the end of school, when they leave school, or as they grow in school, they should be individuals who are thinking individuals. They should be people who have a kind of a knowledge about themselves as much as about the world. So we do try to teach our children to go within and also without. Now, in this, art has a huge role to play, because when children are engaged with art as a part of their curriculum, as a part of their study, they tend to have a mindset which we believe is very open, which is creative, which is constantly looking for solutions, because solution finding is again a huge skill that you need. So these are the kind of things that art brings in. Now, what are the challenges that we face as schools? The biggest challenge is that why not more periods for maths and science? Why art? And that's where we have to convince our parents, and we have to tell them that, look, math, science, everything is being taught, but art needs to be brought into mainstream. Art needs to be a part of the way a child is brought up. and he has to be son. So, we try to expose our children to a lot of wonderful, all the workshops I was saying through Siddharth's presentation. So we've done Madhubani in school. We've done, we've brought Kalamkari painters who come and teach the children. They bring the kalam and the बच्चे खरीदते हैं वो kalam और उससे वो करते हैं कलमकारी और उससे वो मुझे लगता है बच्चे अपने they get tied to their own roots also, because our Indian tradition and culture has so much to offer. So why don't we use that to teach our children to be proud Indians? And also, I think let's give art the space it deserves. And that is the biggest challenge that we do face. But it's happened, and I'm sure it'll happen more.
Thank you, Uttara. I would just ask our attendees, if you have any questions, do put it in the chat box. I'm going to continue with the questions we have for our panelists while you take the time to do that. So, Penny, this comes back to you. In your research, which approach or approaches have been effective in embedding creative pedagogy in various learning environments?
Very good question. It requires a longer answer than we've got, but I think my best advice would be to start with the community of learners and teachers together. So I think when an approach is co-designed with children, with young people, with educators, alongside artists, alongside cultural centres, spaces, creative professionals, I think then everybody is involved in the process. It becomes a community of practice. So I would suggest that, thinking about the values that underpin why you do what you do, thinking about the principles that you want to take forward through everything, and then you can still have kind of curriculum coverage, but integrating these creative processes in everything you do. So I would suggest an approach around creative inquiry, co-inquiry. My PhD focused on kind of self-directed inquiry. You saw Bo and Jay's own bodies of work that they presented as my art students would in the university. And I think it's that notion that, you can frame something, you can still have a structure, but you can have the freedom to follow your fascinations within it.
Thanks. And another side that we haven't heard or seen from Siddharth is in his role as an educator. And Siddharth has actually developed a lot of really interesting learning experiences that bring together multiple disciplines. If you could share a few insights, Siddharth, I think that would be really helpful for our participants.
Yeah, thank you. Can I share again? Is it okay?
Yeah. And I would just request.
I'll be short. I think one of the first things that I did was to teach in Rishi Valley School. And I think when I taught in Rishi Valley and then later in SecMol and Fab India, one of the things that became apparent was that how is education seen, and why do we have the kind of differences that we have between craft and art, between what is technology, what is art, and why do we not have those things come together? Like, why is it that creativity in a school is confined to a classroom? Why is it confined to so these I'm trying to show through images of projects and things that we have done, and especially one that we're doing, about looking at physics, sciences, how do you look at weather, how do you look at art, how do you look at spaces? And if we could somehow make these things come together, especially because one of the things I love is teaching. I've been teaching for the last 15 years in schools and colleges, but especially I started my career by being a teacher at school, like I said. And in the last 10 years that I've been teaching, and often I would take a lot of my students to some of the projects we were doing. And even now, like, we have a whole bunch of online interns from across the country and the world. And I keep showing us how we look at art and spaces that show art, and how do you interact with it. And if only we could somehow make this happen more, and so that people don't see the differences that you have. Why should there be a difference between if I consume art by looking at, or how do I understand what art is? Why is the phrase like state of art, technology even there as a thing? So that's basically pretty much what I wanted to say. That why is it kind of boxed in, and can there be something that really celebrates the idea of creativity, and can one see art in a larger paradigm where it's not about Western or Indian and traditional and contemporary? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Those are really good points, which is always about, I think art is always about pushing limits and breaking boundaries. And that's also within ourselves and within our own thinking as well as educators. And that is something we must ask of our learners. So we have a question from an audience member, which is a very kind of ongoing common question, which I'd like to kind of put to our panelists, which is how fair is it to analyze children's art in terms of grades as art is their expression? So this is kind of an ongoing issue in the traditional Indian schools about the evaluation and assessment of art. So I would open it to the panel members who would like to take this question on. How to analyze children's art in terms of grades as art is their expression?
I'm happy to start and then pass over, but I think it's in a way it's a misconception, because I think that assessment can be very useful if it's integrated in everything as a dialogue alongside the young person, alongside the child, rather than being a grade or a test or a performance-led agenda. And I think that if children, so the children I worked with for the 5 years through my PhD data collection, we would be constantly in a critical and creative dialogue about their art, about their work, about their learning, about what they were interested in. And I think that that's where assessment becomes useful, because it's about kind of dialogue and feedback, and every child progresses at a different rate anyway. I think it's a as Ken Robinson said, it's a misconception that we put 30 or 50 children in the same room and they all learn because they're the same age. I think so. I'm going to pass over to someone else. What do you think?
So I'll come in here, because that's what we're doing, in schools. We do, many schools do that. They would still give an A or an A plus or a B. And I personally feel that is no assessment actually. What is the purpose of assessment? The purpose of assessment is that the learner should get some feedback about their work. And they should probably, understand what works or what doesn't work, or what could work better. So I think what Penny said, that, having a dialogue with a child about their artwork, or have understanding from their perspective that what have you done and why is it like this, and what would you like, what are you portraying, probably is a better way of assessing art. The A's and B's don't work, not at all. I don't think so. Rivka, you need to unmute.
I think assessment is always a challenge for educators, and thank you for sharing some insights on that. I'd like to put the final question to all the panel members, which is, from your perspective and from your work, what key challenges have you encountered, and how do you see the way forward?
Big question. Let's start it. I think we need another session. But yes, I mean, there are absolutely, across the world at the moment, there are massive challenges, not least because of COVID, but the digital divide is one of them. I put that in the chat. I think, the lack of funding and resources, and various education systems across the world that are delivering education as a package, rather than starting with the notion of children and young people's development as human beings in the world. And so it shouldn't be about grades. My daughter said, I'm more than a score. I think it's very much about, integrating a process of learning and encouraging everybody to love learning, to have that intrinsic motivation. And as educators alongside children and young people, we have a responsibility to design a learning approach that is about a future-facing world. We have a climate emergency, we have a pandemic, and I think solving real-world problems is absolutely important at the moment. I'm on a UNESCO Futures of Learning group, and I'm very happy to report back about that another time.
Uttara?
Yes, I agree with Penny, absolutely. The challenges that we face as schools, I'll say, so in India, schooling is also a challenge in itself, right? Because we are such a diverse country, and you have areas that are right from rural to urban to a variety of things. So we can't just club children together, like she said. I completely agree with her there. But what I think is, if we look at each one of us looks at our little space and tries to better it, probably that would help. Start small. And the challenge that we face, if I talk to you about as a school, that when we try to look at art differently, the biggest challenge were our teachers, because the teachers themselves were taught in a particular way. They did not know how to teach differently. And it took us some time to break, with the help of Art First and your curriculum and the way you kind of trained our teachers so diligently. We had beautiful mentors who were with our schools. And, the effect or the impact of change takes time. And I think that's another challenge, that we need to be patient. We should not expect that, oh, today I'm going to go and integrate art, and tomorrow I'm going to have fantastic artwork, and my children are suddenly going to not draw the tree and the mountain and the river and the birds. No, that doesn't happen. It takes some time. So I think one challenge is that we need to be more patient. And one other challenge is we need to give our teachers the space to get retrained.
Absolutely. I know a lot of teachers have been asking and really needing that space in order to also transform their knowledge and their learnings. Thank you for sharing that, Uttara. Siddharth, would you like to take on this question as well?
Very much. I have strong views on that. So I feel that in education, if there was a way that we can create a module, be it in a virtual paradigm or as a physical kind of space that is in school, where you had something that really allowed you to look at art in this kind of incredibly integrated way. After almost 20 years, when I started my career as a teacher of young children, for the first time, and which was very frightening for me, I did a design workshop for 10 to 12-year-old children over the last 5 weeks. And I tell you, like, I've been teaching postgraduate and graduate students for more than a decade, but teaching 10 to 12-year-olds is quite scary after that. And what was fun was we were looking at tessellations, looking at geometry that create tessellations, making tessellations out of leaves, out of flowers, looking at geometry in nature. And their whole thing was that, but my father told me that, I'm going to be learning graphic design. And one person said, oh, my mother told me that, I'll be learning how to make a poster design. And the idea of what design is and why is, in our country, we're an old culture, and there are many old cultures across the world. There are new paradigms of looking at old and new. And if somehow we could have that in school, like if there was a little arts lab or a creative lab that looked at art, design, architecture, craft together, where you had mandated, if a school could afford it, like once in a semester or many times in a semester, you could have craftspeople who come and do a basketry workshop. You have someone who comes and shows a coding of how does the warp and the weft happen, and you replicate the same in a computer class. You look at the physics of a thermal mass of an object while you create an object. Why does a terracotta pot that you throw on a wheel, why does it become cool, and why does it have porosity that translates? So I'm just saying that if you have this way of looking at art in some ways, and if they could be done through workshop kind of modules, where teachers, principals, parents, you have this kind of way which someone should realize how wondrous art is, and if you just box art in as, you draw a house, you draw a bird, of course you must do that because drawing is such a cognitive thing. But if you limit it to that, it just feels like, what a shame, And if you have that right from the beginning and children just fly a kite, they go bonkers because it becomes something which is celebratory. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Solving all the world's problems one panel at a time. That was a beautiful answer, Siddharth. Thank you. So in closing, I think we're out of time. So I wanted to again thank our audience for being present and participating. And I hope as we continue these sessions, we can have more conversations and more discussions. And I hope this session has been enlightening, illuminating, and informative from Dr. Penny Hay, who's an artist, educator, scholar, a researcher, and a deep engagement with process from Uttara Singh, who's a principal, her lived practice as a leader in the educational environments, and from Siddharth Tas, who's a designer, a thinker, a creator, a maker. So you've had three different, very different, divergent perspectives on what the potential of an art integrated learning approach, practice, and lived experience in the world can look like. So again, I'd like to thank all our panel members, Dr. Penny Hay, Siddharth Tas, and Uttara Singh for being with us today, and to all our attendees. We have a very exciting bit of news to share that Dr. Penny Hay and Siddharth Tas have agreed to do a deeper engagement with art integrated learning, and we will keep you posted about this workshop for our educators and for principals coming up soon. If you have signed up through our for the Zoom session, you will receive the email information on that upcoming workshop. To learn more about Art First, people, please go to our social media channels at Art First India. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. To get in touch with us regarding our programs, you can get in touch with Priya Mehta. The information, if you share our closing screen, you'll see her information there. And post this session, you will receive an email with a link to the recording of the session on YouTube, so you can kind of play it back and review some of the learnings and insights. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you again to the panel members. And I hope everybody has a lovely evening.
Thank you.